Welcome, welcome. Dr. Stephen Hobbs here from the Wealth Movement, sharing a tip about co-creating the well-living workplace. And someone asked me the other day, what would make a difference to your business if you went back and you really rethought through the idea? And so I reframed it a little bit and I said, well, this would change your business approach if you understood about change. Now, we can go to the very simple look at the word change and, to give money back in change for a dollar, giving nickels and dimes kind of idea. There's that change there. There's the aspect of the personal change, this notion of some shift that's going to happen inside out or outside in. But when it comes to the well-living workplace, I'd like to share a little bit more elaborate concept of change. And for me, change is what happens outside of the boundary of the organization, and transition is the response to that change. And I often associate change with the word STEEP, STEEP. And it stands for social, cultural, technological, environmental, economic, and political. It's from these arenas, these areas, that the change from the outside of your organization, the outside of your workplace, is having an impact on your workplace, and therefore you're transitioning because of it. Social cultural is obviously the generational story that's involved with workplaces today. Technology, AI, apps, we can go on and on with that one. The environmental, we know about climate change and water issues. There is the economic, where there's downturns and upturns and inturns and backturns and all the other kind of stuff. And then there's the political one, which is depending on the stability or the perspective that the government that's working at the time is working from. So these elements are affecting your organization, your workplace, the co-creation of the well-living workplace. And when you get to understand them, you start to figure out ways in which to transition because of that change. Now, there's an interesting thing here is that with transition, there's three types of transition that you can use. The first one is transactional, across the actions and improving the actions. We might think of this as like the efficiencies that you're looking for. Then there's the transformation, the shifting of the form and coming up with other ways in which to go about doing the work. And we might think of this as the effectiveness, as how do we get more effective at what we're doing. And then there's transcendence, and this notion of going to somewhere where you don't even quite know where you're going, and it's sort of going with, there's some hope that everything is going to turn out. But it has a sense of relevance to it, is that you know that there's something that needs to be done. It's relevant that we take these actions with our workplace. Now, another aspect of this change and transition, and using the word boundary of your organization, is that when you put a boundary onto a complex issue, it becomes complicated. In other words, you can now do something with it. So when you understand the boundary of your workplace, the well-living workplace, instead of it being very complex and all these different variables flying around, you can actually start to look at it and go, okay, if we logically go at it this way, there are some feelings and sentiments that's over here. Let's go over and understand those. Let's collect the insights from the people, this notion of co-creation to make it work. Now, the interesting thing is that in the workplace, there's also departments. And you might say, well, a department might have a boundary, and therefore the organization of a whole, how is it influencing that department? And therefore the department is in transition. So if you're downsizing and a department is leaving, then there's a great impact on those inside that department. And the same thing could be said for groups and teams. They're starting to form boundaries. Therefore, what's happening in the organization, what's happening in the department is going to influence those groups and teams. And therefore, how do you transition in the teams themselves. So I wanted to just give you this sense of change and transition because I've written about it over the years. I've spoken about it through workshops, and I find that it's a very fascinating way in which to look at this co-creation of the well-living workplace, to actually get all of the people, all the stakeholders involved in the transition because of change. And where is that going to take us, and why, and what's that fit, or where is that going to lead us to? So with that, the course that I have at wealthmovement.com/organizational-health deals with this aspect of change, this aspect of the steep elements of change, by sharing with you, and where you dive into and you interact with others around this notion of the 10 dimensions of the well-living workplace. So with that, I wish you well in your transition because of change associated with your workplace. Figure out the boundary that you're working with, and you'll be farther ahead than if you just leave it sort of open and not quite knowing what's happening. Again, questions, there are places around this video where you can drop in a comment. And I look forward to seeing you in the course. Again, wealthmovement.com/organizational-health, and by answering your questions. So take care.